How are you?
Hello,
How's it going?
it's going.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Good times at Austin Immersion this weekend, huh?
it was real. I have to give major props to Andy. I mean, she is an amazing teacher. She
Oh,
just
yeah.
did an awesome, I mean, of course, everybody does an amazing job, but it was so cool to interact with everybody. And really, I've done Austin Immersion probably 3 times, but just hearing things differently. And Andy is such an amazing teacher. She really just she stops and thinks before the questions were, we had a lot of questions, and she would stop and just kind of think about it and give great feedback. So, I mean, I think it was just really awesome that she taught it. And I don't know, a very different experience from the last. They're all good experiences, of course, but she just did a really good job. So, I mean, I'm super proud of her, and I thought it was just, I don't know, amazing for her experience as well. So
Do you notice that how many times have you taken Austin Immersion now?
3 times.
So are you noticing how much you're growing and being able to integrate and synthesize the information more?
Yeah, I'm realizing how hard it is just to all the information provided. It was a lot. I mean, I got a lot from it, but I'm like, wow, it takes a lot really just to have the energy that you want to provide for your class and how to hold that space. And with
Yeah.
all the different um energetics that come into play in the season and everything. I mean, if you're teaching a class and you're not really present and you're not in tune with what's going on,
Yeah.
man, I mean, that was a huge thing for me. And I thought it was awesome how that just kind of clicked for me. I was like, wow, I've got so much more to learn.
And
But we're
that's what I love it when people take Austin Immersion because then they go, wow, there is so much more that goes into putting a class together. You can't know what that is until you've actually taken Austin Immersion.
Yeah.
And I think that's where when people take it for the first time, you know, whenever I shared, sometimes that's when people leave Master's Path because they go, oh my gosh, I had no idea, what was actually going into these classes. And a lot of people don't really know. I mean, with energetics, biomechanics,
Yeah.
season, time of day, and then like you said, you really got have to be on your game and really present because it's like patting your belly, chewing gum, jumping up and down, and patting your head, all at the same time. I mean, people do approach it and can approach it by going in and going, inhale, take triangle, you know, or whatever, or not teach because the other thing is teaching through observation for you guys in Austin Immersion. Did you notice that's the big shift, is that when you're in a real school of yoga, you don't do the poses while people are doing the poses. You can't possibly teach a true yoga class that way. And it's really all about your ability to observe and up leveling your observations. And so good job, Carly, and all of you that were in there. Barbara, was that your second time to take asana immersion?
Sorry. Wasn't I seem to recall that I've taken 2 out of 3 weekends. I thought it was a 3 weekend thing.
It was a 3 weekend thing. There
Okay.
was a time that we expanded it.
Okay.
You
When
know,
it was a 3 weekend thing, I took 2 out of the 3 weekends. And so I told Gracie, I need to take one more weekend.
yeah.
And so
Well,
that,
we expanded it. We never changed the tuition. The price of the tuition has not changed in, I don't know, almost 20 years. And it was always 2 weekends. Well, I got really, zealous about it. And I was like, I want it to be 3 weekends. And we made it 3 weekends. We didn't change the tuition on it. And then we came back. And since we've started our yoga therapy, we have our therapy training program and we have so many things. And that's when Dee and I got together and she's like, maybe we need to take it back to the 2 weekends. and two, for the tuition price, 3 weekends, it really needed to be more for 3 weekends,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
$600 or $700 for 3 weekends, and that number of hours of training. Um, we either needed to go up, but really we were able to use that third weekend more,
Okay.
for other things.
Okay. So,
So
so then, yeah, it would have been my like a second time, and um, like like Carly said, you just you hear something else triggers you. I have such an appreciation and have, especially this year, taking class nearly every day of how
yay,
classes.
you.
I know. I think I have taken more yoga class in the last year than the previous 5 years.
I know, yay, you.
Yeah, it's just become, well, I think a lot of people will say that they have habits during the pandemic and like every day is like Groundhog Day. But I have 7 o'clock I do yoga, and the only day I don't do yoga at 7 o'clock, sometimes I skip Fridays, I'll admit, but like Tuesdays, there is no yoga at 7 o'clock. So I have blocked out my calendar for yoga at 11 o'clock because it's Eastern time for me, right? On Tuesdays. And if people book a meeting, I decline it and I say, no, I'm busy at this time. And I'm marked out of the office. And so I've been pretty strong about taking at least 4 to 5 days a week class. So I think that also helped me with this asana immersion, and coupled so close with anatomy, which I had never taken before.
Isn't that cool? Doing it close to anatomy.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I love it because I don't know if y'all noticed when I was teaching, I'll use anatomical terms a whole lot more. Whenever I can see that a lot of people in the workshop have just taken anatomy, and it gives me that freedom to use that a whole lot more,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
not have people going, I don't know what she's saying, but it's awesome. Yeah, I love it. I really do. And I love teaching it too. And and Barbara, if when you enrolled it was three and you feel like you still want three, we can certainly work something out for you. But
No, this was supposed to be the third weekend, but I'll have a conversation with Gracie about some tuition because it seems like I'm getting something for nothing. So let me have that conversation with Gracie.
okay, we've got all the stuff still in there.
Yeah.
It's just what we used to do is we would spend more time as a group going over the asana manual in the big group. Like in the big group, like me or one of the other teachers would be up front and we go, okay, what are the indications and contraindications?
You're
And
right.
so we would sometimes spend, I mean, we would really spend quite a bit of time, and we just really saw where, with our collaborative communities, and we have so many knowledgeable people and people that need to teach, people like Carly and Robin. I mean, a lot of people needed to come in and start
Right.
stepping in and teaching more. And it's really cool because doing those collaborative communities, that actually creates more time in the bigger classroom,
Yes.
to be able to just dive deeper into stuff. So that it really, really makes a big difference because we haven't cut down on the competencies. With our IAYT accreditation, our International Association of Yoga Therapy accreditation, we have a set of competencies that we must meet, and then with our Yoga Alliance registry, we have competencies with that we must meet, and we still meet all the same. We easily meet all the same competencies. So there's, just so y'all know, there's not anything being left out. The only thing that's left out is that I just love to teach that workshop, and I love just being in it. But I also see, we have Rasasana immersion, which is a next level, and I can see having another level asana immersion slash something. Like I just see a whole other level. And by adding weekends to those first level things, and if I wanted to add third levels to stuff like the yoga chikitsa stuff we've been adding, we haven't started back up with our chikitsa modules, but we will. But with those Chikitsa modules, that's kind of a third level. And I mean, we have more third level stuff. That's just how enlightened our community is, you know. The enlightenment quote of our community is kind of off the charts, you know. So I need to have that space. And that's why, I brought Andy in, and then, Gracie teaches some of the Ayurveda. And, in the coming 3 to 5 years, I want more of these senior students to start getting more and more experience teaching the first level workshops. Because if I teach the first level plus the second level plus the third level, guess what? I mean, I am like teaching, all the time, all the time, all the time. And we've got great teachers that can do it, So Andy's charged with learning them all. So I told her, I said, you gotta learn them all, learn to teach them all. She's like, oh, no problem. But it's good because we've got a lot of notes now, where we've had people scribing and taking notes, and we have our defined competencies that we want people walking away with from both IYT and Yoga Alliance. So that makes it more and more repeatable,
Yeah. Yeah.
at that first level. And of course, with TT 200, we have several of our senior students and, teachers teaching. I am checking to see if, oh, hold on, y'all. Gracie just shared with me that there's a building issue. He may try to tell me, Gracie, sorry, everybody. It's overflowing into the street, Gracie. This is kind of a bit of an emergency thing, so that's why I don't normally just bring stuff up like this on an open house deal, but
yeah, Jody reported it back to Denise. She was leaving.
Jody saw it.
Yes.
Can I tell him? So let me see. Let me before I start, let me make sure I tell him that, because I know he's going to ask me another question. What, did somebody see it or something?
Yeah, yes, Jody saw it.
It's overflowing to the street. He's probably going to ask somebody in our group to.
Yeah, I asked you to go out there to see if there's a hose or something that's on.
Okay.
But I'm yeah.
Gracie has sent someone out to see if there's a hose on or something, because it's flowing out into the street, period. I'm about to get onto a class and will not be available, period. Well, I'm actually already on the class. So,
Yes.
I know I'm a little sensitive to overflows and waters these days after the freeze. I mean, I tell you, the feeling of hearing water pouring in through the ceiling in the other room, and then walking in and like it's slosh, going over my feet in the carpet. It's kind of a big thing. So I hope he sees that. But yeah, maybe he just stuck a hose in there. And so we've also been cited by the city about our flag. So all of you that are local that have seen our Rasa Yoga flag out there, we live in a weird little zoning place where our business is, and we've never been able to put out a flag. I mean, I always do it anyway. I mean, we had a flag out for like, I don't know, 5 years. I remember those two giant 12-footers, and nobody ever said a word. It just sort of depends on who's staff at the time. But in that little area where we are, it's actually zoned by the Friendswood Housing Association, or something. I don't know. It's a weird zoning. And they have come and told us to take our flag down. And they also went to Lamonaco, and he texted me and he was like, move it closer to the building, because it's ridiculous, because so many business now are, really trying to let people know they're open and are struggling. And it's like, really, the city, you want? He kind of had words. He says, look, I said a few things to him too. He said, that was ridiculous, And he's actually seen me go to the city to fight something before, because he was there too, happened to be there. And I said, if I didn't have so many things going on right now, I would probably go up to a city meeting and have something to say about it. I may still. because, just down the street on the other side of that line, signs are everywhere, but that's a different zoning, like 2 blocks up. And we hired a sign spinner, and a sign spinner, they like within that sort of little half-mile radius, they can't spin signs there. They have to go. It's kind of a crazy thing. So Dr. LaMonaco, he's our landlord. For those of you that are not local, he has our business, and he's a great guy. And we've just been in conversation about the sign today. So I feel like I definitely owe it to him to make sure we inform him about his koi pond. We don't want any fish floating out of there either. So probably good for her to check to make sure. He's got some beautiful koi in there. And I wonder if that would happen. I wonder if they could go up there and flow over. That wouldn't be good. So welcome, everyone. I'm clicking around to see who all I see. And tonight is a talk on inclusivity, diversity, and unity, or inclusivity, diversity together. And I want to welcome everyone, and let us just take a moment. I'd like to invite you to, if it's comfortable for you, to close your eyes for a moment and draw your attention to your breathing. And as you draw your attention to your breath, feel your sit bones on the ground beneath you. And just notice what it is you're aligning yourself with today. Notice if you're aligning yourself with what's possible, with the beauty of the unknown. Or notice if you're aligning yourself with the past, with your history. Notice if you're aligning yourself with your fears, with your worries. Simply cultivating an awareness, and as you do so, accepting, allowing things to be exactly as they are, and making the attention on your breathing your priority. As you feel or sense the rise and fall of your breath, a very simple practice is naming your breath. And the way you do that is when you inhale, you simply say to yourself, breathing in. And when you exhale, silently say to yourself, breathing out. In this way, you cultivate an awareness of your breath, and you consciously direct your inner dialogue. And then from here, taking a deep breath in and a cleansing breath out. You can draw your palms together in front of your heart. As you take this Anjali Mudra, your palms together, feel or sense that sort of as a reconciliation of opposites, of right to left, of lunar to solar. And let us acknowledge the presence of all saints, sages, gurus, teachers, and masters. May our minds be wise and clear. May our intention be pure. May our hearts be merciful and loving. Namaste. So tonight our topic is on inclusivity and diversity, and the experience of togetherness as human beings. And I would like to first share about the word yoga. You know, a lot of people, when they hear the word yoga, unfortunately, they refer to yoga, they mean doing a posture. And yoga is not doing a posture. That's called an asana, and that is one very small aspect of the whole realm of yoga. Yoga is not something you do, it is something you become. Becoming yoga, just like the name of this Monday night class is called Being Yoga, the art of being yoga. So all of us in practice, we're becoming yoga so that we might be yoga. And to become yoga is to become unified and in the remembrance of the truth of who you are, the eternal aspect of your nature, which is beyond this body. It is consciousness. Consciousness is comprised of, our awareness in the world, our higher ability. Some can refer to it as Christ consciousness, our highest mind of wisdom. And then our consciousness, our mind is comprised of our mind, our mental intellect, and also that higher intelligence, and our emotions as well. And, within consciousness and mind is our sense of small s self, the way we identify in the world, our ego, our personality. And then there is our outer self, which is seen in yoga as a result of that consciousness. Then there's the body. So that's why I say yoga really, yoga is not really meant to address fixing the body somehow. You do not transform matter with matter. However, you see the word yoga, and the word yoga is a becoming self, is the art of becoming. Just 1 second, we need a muter, we need a mute because it kind of gets with our sound. So it's a sense of becoming. Now, that which is the opposite of yoga, the word is bhoga. And just a quick kind of experience of what that is one that tends to identify with the world through their outer self, that outer self that I spoke about, the small s self. And it primarily identifies with the world through their sensory experience. So here's the deal. When one is in a state or cultivates the art of becoming yoga, as opposed to cultivating the art of becoming boga, then we become more at one with ourselves, and we start to see the world more from the inside out, like an internal reference point. But when we're in that experience of boga, we start to see the world from the outside in. And not only that, human beings become either a source of pleasure for the senses. They become a part of our resistances in the world. They become a part of our attachments. And our relationship with other people becomes a sensory experience, as opposed to a becoming yoga experience, as opposed to a relating to someone from my big S self or this empowered, unified heart. So this is the overarching idea. I hope that's really clear for everyone. The difference between me relating to you based on my senses and how you satisfy my senses are displeasing to my senses, or me relating to you from a place of wholeness, my big S self that is lying more, that is seeing more deeply from my own consciousness as opposed to my senses. Okay, so that's our overarching kind of idea there. So I hope if you hear me say boga, that is what leads us to the issues and problems that we will have with people, like war, like prejudice, bias, these kinds of things. So through this process of becoming yoga, people actually are meant to be our mirrors. That when we are relating with someone, that whatever it is that we're experiencing with them, we're able to really understand that what we're seeing is a reflection of how we see things. So like if I see Andy a certain way, if I say, Andy, you are beautiful. Well, me seeing Andy as beautiful, you needed to hear that tonight, I can tell. Me seeing Andy as beautiful. The truth is, first and foremost, it defines me as someone that sees another human being as beautiful. That's coming from a state of yoga. And you actually start to see that world that way. It does not in any way diminish the experience of beauty for Andy, but I could tell Andy that all day long. But if Andy does not see that for herself, it doesn't really matter. You know, it's almost like it just rolls off, and can, not that that's happening with Andy, but it can, you know. And then I might feel offended that she couldn't hear what I was saying, or, you know, that's the whole sensory stuff. Whereas, you know, if I saw Andy and I went, "Oh, Andy, you're mean," or if I said, I love Andy, she's not mean at all, but let's say, you know, "Andy, you're so mean." Usually when I pick people for an example, it's because they're the opposite of that. I'm not going to go someone maybe has that issue. But if I said, "Andy, you're so mean," guess who I'm really defining? Myself. Right? I'm defining myself. Because I'm seeing Andy, but I'm really always looking in a mirror, because I'm seeing where I am. And if mean is my experience, then that's what I'm seeing. Is that good or bad? It's neither or. It's simply an experience. And that's the beautiful thing, and why one of the many reasons we need each other, because we are beautiful reflections to one another. And when we can start to see what a reflection we are to one another, that is really the beginning of being able to know what true intimacy is. We can never really know what intimacy is if I'm relating to you through my senses, because all I'm really concerned about is getting my sensory needs met by your presence. You know, and of course, on a scale of 1 to 10, if we look at somebody doing that on a 10, that's a high level narcissist. On a 1, somebody that's in a state of boga, they're always walking around kind of in a low level state of narcissism, possibly. It's like, you exist to meet my needs. That's a state of boga. And the issue with that is that if you're not meeting my needs, or if you're different than me and there's no way you can meet my needs, then chances are I'm going to assume I don't need you. I might be afraid of you. I might judge you. There's a number of different things going on. So I'm giving you guys this overarching intro to begin with, because it gives us a place to move forward, a place to have the conversation. Because if anything I say, you say, "Well, I don't agree with that." Well, it depends on where you're coming from. If you're coming from this place of yoga versus boga, then, I mean, you know, it's going to be right on point with it. There is no agree or disagree. If you're coming from another land and you are totally in a state of boga, and you don't understand that sort of groundwork that we're coming from, or the perspective we're coming from, then yeah, from your perspective, that may be right on point, you know, however you're seeing it. Yes, Carly?
So when you just said the statement you just said, does codependency align with what you're saying?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Like 1,000 times. Great connection,
Okay.
Carly.
Okay.
The state of boga is the state of codependency, big time. You know, and yeah, great connection there. That's really good. So this is the place where we're coming from. So I want you guys to understand, this is, you know, yoga psychology is so incredibly comprehensive. And this class, this ongoing course called Being Yoga, is a yoga psychology class. It has a physical component to it in Master Sadhana, but that's not the leading edge. The leading edge is from consciousness. So what I'm going to cover tonight about this is kind of from the state of, first of all, I'm going to come from this. First of all, you want to be clear on where are you usually coming from? You know, and start to cultivate a self-awareness. And you're going to kind of hear with some of the things I'm going to say tonight, it's going to help you to sort of see where you're coming from in your views of other people. and then ultimately start to see how we can potentially become a solution for division, prejudice, just racism. I mean, even some of the minor discriminatory things that go on. I mean, even discriminations towards small children and the disrespect that we show to small children as if they have no intelligence. Nobody here, but you know what I mean? Like kind of the way we treat children, So the overarching solution to prejudice and bias is yoga. And it is everyone becoming yoga and coming into that state of yoga, because the state of yoga is a unified state with one's big S self. And if you're in that unified state of your big S self, then you're going to start to see within your own humanity where judgments or prejudices or things show up, and you're going to know what to do about it, or you're going to learn what to do about it. So this is my main intention and where we're going tonight. And to start, when we are speaking about inclusivity, diversity together, the first thing that we've got to do is we have to really learn how to accept people exactly where they are. I mean, a deep level acceptance of where people are, everyone. But, if we are not experiencing a state of yoga and we're in a state of boga, in a state of boga, the acceptance of other people as they are will be almost impossible. Because when one is in a state of boga, and the main North Star is satiation of the senses, and the senses getting what they want and it being happy and all this, when that's the leading edge, then what begins to happen is a polarization. And that polarization is, I said I don't like grilled cheese sandwiches. Stop making me grilled cheese sandwiches. I don't like you when you make me grilled cheese sandwiches. I'm just giving a lighthearted example. We have much more serious examples that we deal with in polarization. The much more serious ones that we see showing up is the hatred within our political system from one side to the other. It's like, this is me, this is who I am, and you are completely wrong. That's called polarization. And the birth child of polarization is judgment and prejudice, and will naturally lead to bias. It's like, that's just all there is to it. And so it's really understanding here that it doesn't, I'm not making the sensories a bad thing, but the sensories as our leading edge, and the senses as our leading edge, and the way we view life will lead us to polarization. And the statement of accept people as they are will be extremely difficult to understand. And that's why I'm going to repeat a couple of different times for everyone that I'm not about just talking sort of esoteric, kind of airy-fairy, accept everyone as they are. Because it is really a process of discipline of becoming yoga. Because first and foremost, a person that is really becoming yoga has a very empowered sense of self-acceptance. If there is not a place of big S self-acceptance for you and who you are and where you come from, and all of your mistakes, your failures, and your successes, then it's going to be almost impossible to accept others exactly as they are. And when I'm saying this, guys, it really requires a strong sense of self-study, of being able to really notice all those little ways you divide against yourself and all those little ways that you judge yourself. Very, very important. Okay, so self-acceptance, or accepting people as they are, just a few little notes on that and a few reflection questions. Whenever you accept people the way they are, I have found there's a certain invigoration in the diversity. It's not just that it's a nice thing to do, but like if you go over to the Arboretum over there in Memorial Park, if you haven't seen it, it's quite awesome. Um, it's beautiful. They have so many different species. And I know also in Arm Bayou as well. It's just that I was recently at the Arboretum. So many beautiful species of plants and birds. And if you go to Arm Bayou as well, same thing. Imagine if there was just one type of species out there and only one element, water. I don't know. It just wouldn't be possible. It requires all the different diversity of being. And, you know, we want to start to notice that being different is necessary. None of us have the same fingerprints. At least I don't think so. No one has the same fingerprints. And there's a reason we don't have the same fingerprints, but we all have fingerprints, right? And so being able to appreciate the differences instead of sizing people up and, you know, sizing up how different they are from you, instead of just, you know, entering into a relationship with someone, whatever type of relationship that is, with just an understanding that we're all from the same, you know, species as humans. Few self-reflection questions is, do you actually make a concerted effort to accept people as they are? Or have you just grown dull to, that's my judgments, no big deal. I'm thinking them, so nobody knows what I'm thinking, so what does it matter? You know, do you sit you go to a movie and you see people walking in and you're sizing them all up, judging them? You've got to get really, you know, clean and clear with yourself and answer these questions with a sense of self-acceptance and self-love and mercy. Do you want people to accept you fully? What would it be like if all of humankind accepted you exactly as you are, and you knew that without a doubt, that you were accepted exactly as you are? So a couple of journaling reflection questions. Next, you know, to really come into more the state of yoga, you know, in yoga, we really, really understand and know the power of sound, and the power of our words and language. Languaging is very important. And, you know, you want to start to notice, like, from that thinking part of acceptance or not or non-self acceptance, what is the inner language and the words that you use on a regular basis toward yourself? Because you can bet that those words are going to be felt by others. And you will probably find that those words will eventually come out of your mouth. You know, so it's very, very important to create, you know, I guess a kind of a little library of some words that are very helpful. And these are words that I know that I use frequently that are bridge building. You know, it's like you want to ask yourself, are my words building a bridge? And so one thing is to be able to say to others, I'm listening. I frequently say to people, I'm like, you know, sometimes too, if I know there's a moment that I may not be listening, I might say, look, I'm completely listening. And so I need to pause for a moment here because I really want to hear what you have to say. It's very important to me that people know that I'm listening, and I'm listening with my whole body. I'm listening with my ears. And then when there's times that I'm not able to listen, I'll say, I really want to hear what you're saying, and I'm not able to listen now. Right? It's very important. People need to be heard. And when we learn to hear, it strengthens our ability, it strengthens our intuitive ability and our ability to hear. So the words, I'm listening. And then, I'm sorry. I've heard people say to me, oh, I don't want to just say I'm sorry because, you know, I was taught that if I say I'm sorry, I should not do it again. And if I do it again, then that says I didn't really mean I'm sorry. No, that's not what that means. That's a crazy, ridiculous thing. We're human. You really think that we can look at somebody in the eye and say, I'm so sorry I did that thing. I will never do it again? I mean, even if you really, really believe you'll never do it again, these are just promises you can't make. You can't make these kinds of promises. And it's really important to note, to note that I don't make a lot of promises, because you don't want to make promises that you're not able to keep. And as a human, you can't predict the future. You have no idea. And some promises can become quite toxic. And so I'm sorry. When you say I'm sorry to someone, what you're really saying is that, I am so sorry I've been so stubborn, or I'm so sorry I was so harsh with you. I'm sorry I hurt you. I don't know if I can stop. I am going to work on that and try my best. But I want you to know I'm really, really sorry. There doesn't have to be a bunch of rules around the word I'm sorry. I'm not particularly crazy about telling a kid you have to say I'm sorry, but I'm really crazy about parents making sure they tell their children they're sorry, because they will teach their children to say that they are sorry by what they do and how they say it, and by teaching them what it means. And that the words I'm listening and I'm sorry, they're bridge builders. Also, please forgive me. I've used that word with my family. I've said I'm sorry. Sometimes I've said I'm sorry, and sometimes I will say, will you please forgive me? Also, I absolutely forgive you. And I'm not talking about being able to use those words with a bunch of rules and stipulations. How many of you have rules for I forgive you? Anybody have rules, like underlying rules, to be able to say that? Like, well, they have to make sure they're never going to do it again. That's not a promise that you can make to others, that you're never going to betray another person. That is not a promise that you can make. In this human body and that outer self, the nature of the ego is pure betrayal. I mean, your ego betrays you. And so trying to say that to someone, so you want to notice where you might have these rules around that. But even around the idea of self-forgiveness or self-acceptance, the ability to use these words is really going to be so much a reflection of the words that you use for yourself, and that forgiveness and that space of mercy you hold for yourself. Another really important one is I appreciate you, or I really appreciate what you've done. Words like that, again, it's a real bridge builder. And you don't want to say I appreciate you in sort of a solicitous, patronizing way, but you say I appreciate you as an acknowledgement of the work that was done, or something that was given to you. You don't have to go over the top with it, because that just gets kind of, gicky. I really appreciate you. Here's another one that's really important that I use really a lot too. I know you can do it. If you want to do it, I know that you can do it. Now understand, as I'm sharing these words with you, remember boga versus yoga. The bogey will tend to use these words to get their sensory needs met. That's when they can get glucky, or as Carly, suggested, that's where codependency lies. But from the state of yoga, I know you can do it. That has power, because you're seeing it from your own unified state. You know that they can do it, because you know your own power and the power of being this human with a consciousness. And you really do know that they can do it. I know you can do it. My granddaughter will often say to me at various times that she might feel afraid. I mean, a teenager's normally going to feel this. And you know, I don't give that fear any power. I say, I hear you, and I hear that you're afraid, but I know that you can eat this fear like eating your breakfast. I know you can. You know, oftentimes when people say, I'm so afraid, or I'm so guilty, or I'm so ashamed, the bogey will usually pity them and feel sorry for them. The yogi will say, I hear you, you know, I'm really listening. I hear you, I'm really listening. And I hear you're afraid. And you know what? I know that there's not a thing about this that you can't transcend. I know that this is something that can feed you and make you stronger. I know that. That's some powerful words, my friends. Very powerful words. And then from the state of yoga, again, I want to mention to you the importance of it coming from yoga. I think this is my last phrase. But this is uber important. And again, you want to notice the bogey's going to have rules for all these words I gave you. These are words I use frequently. The yogi has no rules for these. And the final words that are so important is, I love you. Most people have that phrase for very, very few people. And from the state of boga and codependency, I love you often means something very different than from the yogi, from the unified state. Because the yogi, when the yogi says, I love you, they're coming purely from a state of love. They are being love. They are at one with love. And the I love you is, I love you as me and me as you, and there are no rules. And these are some of the most important words that we can say. Let me get my list. So the power of our words. Now next, inclusivity and diversity. Now this one's big, y'all. I better speed it up here. I always make my list so long. And then I've got my subheadings. It could be a whole weekend workshop. It's pretty good. Okay, y'all, get ready. You must trust humanity. You've got to trust humans. How many of you could raise both hands and say, that's great, Padma. I am right on track. I use those words and I trust humanity. You guys, we cannot stand out there and wave our flags of inclusivity and even begin to talk to people about racism if we do not have an inherent trust in humanity. Where do you think that trust comes from first? For those of you, if you're wondering what I'm doing right now, we had a little snafu with in our building, and I want to make sure that he knows we turn the spigot off. I'm going to tell him we turn. Thank you, Jody. Hopefully he's not going, I wanted it to run over. No, I'm just kidding. I was trying to flush it out or something. Yeah. Maybe all the fish were out of there. Anyway, let's get back to trusting humanity.
You have to trust yourself first, and that trust comes from God.
Yes, Paige. You're right on point with that, Paige. So the experience of trust, right? The experience of trust is something you must become first. So in yoga, we have a word, it's really faith plus trust equals hope, is Shraddha. And we must become the experience of trust, you know, and when you move more into that state of becoming yoga and you study Ayurveda, You know, you will often hear me say, you know, the laws of nature are sustainable. Truth is universal, and truth with a capital T. And anything you're going to learn at Rasa Yoga is going to be a universal truth that is unchanging, totally aligned with the laws of nature. The laws of nature are immutable, you know? And the thing is trust first from the yogi, born of trust in the laws of nature and the laws of Dharma. And then, so I'm really saying, in essence, same thing Paige said, the laws of all that is of creation, of the force of the divine. See, how, if I look at trust and that term, trust humanity, as a bogey, trust humanity, you say? Well, humanity doesn't do anything to satiate my senses. As a matter of fact, when I'm around humanity, my sensory experience sucks big time. There's, you know, there's a, I like that group, I don't like that group, and I hate that group, and I don't like that group, and that group sends me all over spinning. Well, if I'm viewing the world from that space, then guys, that trusting humanity, that's going to be a very difficult exercise. But from the state of yoga, the unified field of being, if I say the word trust, and if I say, I don't trust you, what am I really saying?
I don't trust me.
If I, as a bogey, if I say, I don't trust you, I don't trust me. If I don't trust me, I'm never going to trust humanity. But when we come from a state of yoga, there is an inherent trust that we begin to understand that we don't need to trust anyone. That when we become the principle of trust, we begin to understand that that essence of trust is really more for the polarized mind, because everything is always moving toward, just like little plants are moving toward the light of the sun, just like Mother Nature is going to create balance, even if it means blowing away a few houses. I mean, balance has to happen. You know, balance in nature has to happen. You know, Mother Earth, the great Gaia, she'll boot us off. Pachamama will boot us off way before we do her in. Right? That's the laws of nature. And so we say, well, I don't trust humanity to da 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 da. It's like humanity, when we come from the place of yoga, we begin to understand that we are nature, but we are self-aware nature that has this beautiful divine ability to choose to go against ourselves and our true nature. When I opened, I said, what are you aligned with? We have the capacity, which makes it so beautiful, to choose to go against our true nature, explore the world of the senses and boga, and make decisions that I like this, I don't like that, to eat when we're not hungry, you know, go against our true nature, not drink water when we're thirsty, eat things that when we already have too much fire in us, we need to be eating cooling things, but we eat more fire when it's, we totally are like, when we're in the state of yoga, it's like we're always pouring gasoline on the fire. From the state of yoga, the trust of humanity is inherent in our nature, because in that place of becoming yoga, we understand that we are doing what is within our capacity and the time to be in that state of reflection of our true nature. In our true nature, you know, we would not do a lot of the things that we do, reflective of our true nature. Yeah, we would be Akuna Matata, and the cycle of life, we had creation, death, but it would look very different. So trust humanity, my friends. A couple of common sense ideas though around trust, you know, while you're in the process of becoming yoga and being willing to release the need to be the bogey, you know, you've got to really use your common sense, of course. You do want to have and I'm talking safety here, right? I'm not just talking about throw yourself in the middle of a bunch of, boa constrictors or something, early on, you've got to respect your fear and respect those places that you don't trust humanity and you don't trust yourself. So I am saying, in the meantime, if you're just so darn afraid and you don't trust humanity, at least acknowledge, I get it. I'm not trusting humanity. Therefore, humanity is reflecting to me the lack of trust I have in myself. I need to get to work. Because when you become into that place of trust, you will live a more emotionally stable life. And for those of you more experienced yogis, you will live in a state of sattva, a more sattvic life. Here comes another biggie, y'all, which is interesting that it falls on the heels of trust humanity. You've got to let go of secrecy. I know so many people that sort of live in this shroud of secrecy. And sometimes it's families that are in a shroud of secrecy. It's like you have partner, husbands and wives, and in the name of keeping their codependence strong, it's sort of secrecy. If you're embarrassed about things that you do or ways you behave in your relationship, there's probably some pretty serious codependency going on. And it's not good, it's not bad. It is what it is. And so, when you keep secrets about yourself and your feelings, I think I heard Marianne Williamson say one time, you're only as healthy as free of secrets that you are, or you're as sick as your secrets. You're as sick as the more secrets you have, the sicker you are, and or something like that. But it's learning to become transparent. There is such a freedom in transparency. I'm not talking about you'll never have any privacy. You don't want to just go running out in the middle of the road with, naked or something. And, if you're in a particular neighborhood that's challenging. So guys, I am talking common sense here. And if we were on a regular being yoga, I probably wouldn't even say that. But, I just want you to know that you want to use some common sense, that while you're in the process of moving from bogi to yogi, that you want to use some common sense around that. But it is an important goal to live so open and honest that you're not fettered by all your secrets. And, and when you live this secrecy, many of my students, many people in Master's Path still have this shroud over them because our society does that. It's crazy. And it's so imprisoning for the person. But learning to move this shroud from your existence, oh my goodness, most freeing thing you can do. And, what does that have to do with inclusivity and diversity? Well, there's no way you can really know what intimacy is in relationships with people if you're in this shroud of secrecy. And so naturally there becomes, a whole cycle of all sorts of prejudices, because you're going to assume that everybody's as secretive as you are. And you're assuming they're keeping secrets, you're keeping secrets, everybody's got secrets going on. And is anybody ever really relating to anyone ever? Is anyone ever really intimate with anyone? One time, I was going through ministerial school with Unity, and one of the pastors there, one time he said on intimacy, he says, it's into me see. In our society's gotten so kind of morphed, it's all about sexuality, and when in reality, it's into me see, the ability to allow people to see deeply within you and really living that authenticity. Finally, and I think one of the real biggies, and I did touch on this early on, is we have to be willing to see how polarized we are. How much, and when I'm using the word polarized, I mean really just sort of magnetically just hooked in. When we were in Sedona and I was in the store and they had a big basket of magnets and it was super fun. There were powerful magnets and it was so fun putting my hand in the magnets and picking them up, sort of to really see how strong they were, but then to see how the ones repelled each other, it was so cool. And I was like, gosh, I need to get a bunch of these to really be able to show people what this looks like and what real polarization is. And we are electromagnetic beings. And when we polarize in our causal mind, we sort of clump up with people where we think the same. And then and the more people we clump up with, then the more sticky the magnetic clump would get. And then to its repellent magnets, the stronger it pushed against. Well, quite naturally, then the birth child, when people live that sort of polarization, magnetic polarization, the birth child has got to be judgment, because I'm all over here and that becomes sort of, I'm anti those magnets. And anytime you live in an anti space, you cannot know what inclusivity means. You cannot know what becoming yoga is. It's the idea of living pro love, pro unity, pro inclusivity. And that implies you've got to learn what inclusivity is. You've got to learn where those places are that you're living in a polarized state. Whereas if I'm anti that religion, what do I need to learn? I don't need to learn a darn thing. I don't need to learn anything about that religion because I'm anti that religion. What do I care? I don't need to learn about that religion. But if I'm pro inclusivity and I find myself feeling some risings up of very human judgment, then if I'm pro inclusivity, I need to learn about that religion. If any one student, if I've ever felt something like, oh, I don't like them, I want to learn more about them. And when I learn about them, then guess what? Like or dislike no longer matters. When I learning and understanding what makes a person tick, how could I ever dislike someone if they're behaving cruelly and it's because they were treated cruelly for their entire life? How could I? How could I do that? Right? So living in a way that you must recognize when you're in that polarized place, and some signs of that is sort of, you're always in a struggle to get to a superior position so you don't get into an inferior position, because your crocodile brain will say to you, oh my gosh, I'm in an inferior position. This is life or death. I better do what I can to conquer inferiority and get back up on top. So that's the dog eat dog world that we see of war, of conflict, of all or nothing. I have to quit this thing because they are anti, or I don't know, whatever, I'm anti that. I'm anti, that anti living. Oh, you really want to spend some time reflecting on, where do I live in such a way that I'm anti? Am I anti-hate? Well, guess what? If you're anti-hate, what's going to happen when you try to learn more about love? It's not going to work. The word anti implies polarity. It will not work. It will not bring about the inclusivity and the togetherness that is necessary of every one of our unique beings. Imagine if we started creating, I'm anti your fingerprint because I only like my fingerprint. I mean, really, in any given group, everybody's got different fingerprints. It should, I don't know, seems like, we'd have a bias or something. I hope these things have helped you guys. Are there any questions or comments before we close, or anyone? I can't really see anyone on Facebook. There may be something there. I did try to get on Facebook so I could see. By the way, our landlord said, OMG, thank you so much. So Jody, you're like the savior of the day there. So kudos. It takes a village. Questions? I'll take about 5 minutes for questions or comments. And if you want to talk, all you need to do is just push the push your space bar.
I'll go, Padma.
Okay, Barbara, thank you.
One of the things that struck me when I was listening to you, when we're listening to someone else, there's a real human tendency to try to relate by telling a similar story. And then that just turns the attention away from the person and back to you. And it sometimes can be helpful, but a lot of times it can be unhelpful because the person's relating to you because they want to talk about them. They don't want to relate back. And it can be, I've been practicing this with my own daughter, and because she coaches me, she's like, Mom, we're talking about me.
Good daughter, way to go.
Yeah, like she'll be talking about herself, and I'll say, oh yeah, I know this is like, Mom, no, we're talking about me. Don't bring up something on yourself, just listen. All I need you to do is listen. I don't need you to fix it, just hear me. And it's really a strong practice to not want to relate by bringing up a situation in your own life.
Yeah, and Barbara, that's an excellent point, because there are times when it is really useful, because it's people, I find that people do tend to feel like in their secrets that they'll sometimes share that they are the only one with that big secret. And when I'm like, hey, guess what? I got,
right.
Yeah. So I do want to say that can be useful, but what I've really found to be helpful with that is you can ask people, are you looking for, or you can relate to them, say, so are you looking for information or my affirmation? So does your daughter, like, you ask it, it's like, so before I say anything, are you really looking for some information from me on this? Or are you just wanting, do you want affirmation? Both are very powerful and very meaningful.
Yeah. That's a good way to make that distinction.
Because that's the thing I found, Barbara, through all my, training, communication, things like that, that for a long time, I learned that, because I'm a pretty good listener and would listen with my whole body. But then there really were times that people wanted something. And I found that with my granddaughter, there have been few times. She usually wants me quiet more than not. But there has been a time where she's like, so why aren't you saying anything? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Were you looking for information or affirmation? That's a great point, though, Barbara. And the thing is that that's the nature of our outer mind, because our manas, and it's MANAS, is mind. It's a storehouse, right? Our subconscious mind's a storehouse, and our sensors, our outer self, our ego, and our intermediate mind, our intellect, is always searching for ways to make a connection. And on one level, I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world. However, it doesn't bring that intimacy. Like, you're going to miss out on the intimacy if you're not able to really hear, and they talk it all the way through. And so your daughter, in essence, is also saying, Mom, I want more intimacy with you. I want us to feel closer. Not just I want to be heard. I mean, it's like, I want us to be closer to each other. So that's a cool thing. Carly?
I mean, just kind of elaborating on what Barbara said, is that a little bit kind of like group think? Because you want them to, if somebody comes to you with a problem and you're like, oh, I have the same experience. And is that kind of like group think a little bit?
Yeah, it really is that group think where, yeah, and it's like, okay, I have it, she has it, you have it, and
Everybody's kind of feeding off some negative energy, and you're like, oh yeah, I've had the same thing, and then you're feeding off each other's negative energy.
yeah, well, that's how anti-groups get started, you know. And I don't have it here for this group, but that downward spiral is that when we're in a more anti place, we search for allies, to join up in our negative thinking, and we get those allies. And what I've always learned, and I have learned this so fully through experience, you can, from the realm of the bogey. In the realm of the bogey, you can always find evidence to prove anything you want to. I mean, there's evidence, there's plenty of evidence for anything that anybody wants to prove. I don't care if you're Republican, if you're Democrat, if you're Libertarian. I don't care if you're Christian, if you're atheist. Anybody that's got any sort of intelligence at all can make a case and gather enough evidence in the world of the bogey, guys, can gather enough evidence to make a compelling story. That's what a great lawyer does, can make a compelling story for any way. And that's why, when we get caught up in prejudice, it's like, prejudice, really? It seems to me sort of like it would be kind of a non-issue, but it's not, because we're all human and we still have that, that tendency toward polarization. Okay, so if there's anything else pressing, anything you guys see on Facebook before we close? I hope this just kind of opened up a little bit of gateway, a little bit of light, and could be somewhat helpful on this throughout this month in Being Yoga. We're really staying with the topics of codependency, community building, relationships, and any of you that are interested in Being Yoga, that we do have a class card promotion, really good class card promotion going on right now that includes both our Monday nights and our master sadhanas. So please be on the lookout for that coming out through email. I don't think we have a link for it just yet, but there will be a link for that. That's going to be out and about for you. And thank you all so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. So if you'd like to just take your palms together in front of your heart. So this is sort of the inclusivity mudra, the drawing together of opposites in the space of your heart. Let us acknowledge the presence of all saints, sages, gurus, teachers, and masters. May our minds be wise and clear. May our intention be pure. May our hearts be merciful and loving. Namaste. Thank you all so much. Please, if you're up to it, go to Facebook and put a comment. It'll be on the recording tonight. Just put a comment on your experience of the talk. And I really appreciate you guys being here. Bye. It's great to see you, Donna G. Yeah, everyone. Namaste. Nice to meet you, Serena. Everyone. Bye. Bye, Rhonda.